I still remember that electrifying moment as if it were splashed in neon across my mind. The moment I discovered that our emergency fund, the very lifeline we'd painstakingly built for unforeseen hardships, had been squandered on a lavish escapade with her affair partner. In those first 100 heartbeats, every dream we'd nurtured together shattered into fragments of disbelief and raw betrayal. The shock was absolute. The fund meant to shield us in times of crisis was gone, leaving nothing but the bitter taste of deception. And as the reality sank in, a fierce resolve took root within me, a resolve to reclaim not only my future but the dignity I'd lost in that devastating moment. I had always believed that our emergency fund was our safety net, a secure reservoir built through shared sacrifices and endless nights of scrimping and saving. It wasn't meant for frivolous indulgences or secret liaisons. It was supposed to be our shield against life's unpredictable storms. For years, I had contributed every spare penny, scrimping from luxuries and putting aside what little extra we could muster. I watched our savings grow slowly, each deposit a promise for a stable tomorrow, a promise that we would always have a fallback in times of need. I trusted that every dollar, painstakingly earned, would one day stand as a testament to our commitment and foresight. But as I sat alone one chilly evening, scrolling through our bank statement on my laptop, the numbers leapt out like a cruel punch. There it was. Our emergency fund, once a robust cushion for hard times, had been drained entirely. The transactions were unmistakable, each withdrawal tied to an overseas trip, to expenditures I never authorized or even suspected. My heart sank as I stared at the figures, a storm of anger and disbelief swirling inside me. I couldn't fathom how she could betray our shared security so callously. That moment was a collision of raw emotion, a cocktail of heartbreak, rage, and a dawning clarity that nothing would ever be the same. I remember the hushed conversation we had in the days that followed, when the truth began to emerge in fragments. My wife tried to offer feeble excuses, her eyes darting away whenever I asked for details. It became painfully clear that the lavish spending was not a one-time lapse of judgment, it was a deliberate act, a calculated move to fund her secret affair with a man whose presence in our lives I had never imagined. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. Every memory of our long nights of planning, of shared hopes for the future, now felt like a cruel illusion, shattered by her betrayal. In that dark moment of revelation, as I held the evidence in my trembling hands, I knew I had reached a crossroads. I spent many sleepless nights ruminating over what had happened. I replayed every conversation, every subtle hint I had once dismissed as mere stress or fatigue. I realized that while I had built our safety net with unwavering diligence, she had used that same fund as a playground for her secret desires. The shock and hurt gave way to a quiet, burning determination. I resolved that I would no longer be defined by her actions or her choices. I would reclaim the future that was rightfully mine, my hard-earned security, my identity, and my dignity. That night, as the house grew silent and the shadows lengthened, I closed my eyes and vowed, if she had chosen to gamble away our shared safety, I would build a new fortress with the remnants of my own foresight. With that resolve burning inside me, I began the painstaking process of planning my next steps. I revisited every financial record, every bank statement, confirming the devastating truth that our emergency fund was gone. I retraced the timeline of the withdrawals and uncovered the painful details of her spending. Each number was a reminder of our shattered future, yet it also became the impetus for a new beginning. I called my financial advisor, who confirmed that while our joint savings had been decimated, my personal assets, those I had safeguarded with secret precautions, remained intact. That knowledge, bittersweet as it was, offered a glimmer of hope amid the darkness. I knew then that I couldn't sit idly by. I had to take control of my life. I began to draft a plan, a roadmap to reclaim not only my financial security but also my self-respect. I poured my heart into an old leather-bound journal, scribbling down every emotion, every thought that raced through my mind. I mapped out the steps I would take, securing my personal assets, distancing myself from the life that had been built on betrayal, and forging a new path that celebrated my own dreams and ambitions. Each word was an act of defiance, a promise to myself that I would not allow her actions to dictate my future. As the initial shock faded into a determined resolve, I started to take practical steps. I reached out to trusted financial professionals to discuss my options. I carefully reviewed my portfolio, looking for ways to reallocate funds and build a secure foundation for the future. Every meeting was a reminder that while our shared funds had been squandered, I still had the means to build a life that was truly my own. I began researching new investment opportunities, exploring ways to grow my personal wealth independently of her reckless decisions. At the same time, I delved deep into self-reflection. I questioned every moment of our past together. Was I too naive? Had I ignored the subtle hints of her growing discontent? I allowed myself to grieve the loss of the future we had planned, yet I also recognized that this betrayal was, in its own cruel way, a turning point. It was the catalyst for my transformation, a painful nudge that forced me to look inward and rediscover the strength I had long buried beneath compromises and unspoken fears. In that intense solitude, I began to see that the life I had envisioned was not entirely a shared dream, it was also my own. I remembered the countless times I had envisioned a future where I would stand tall, successful and independent, unburdened by the need for validation from others. Now, the betrayal had given me the impetus to pursue that vision with renewed vigor. I started to redefine my goals, focusing on my career aspirations and the personal achievements I had once set aside. I vowed to build a future where my successes would be celebrated, not overshadowed by someone else's reckless choices. Every step of that journey was a painful yet necessary process of shedding old identities and embracing a new reality. The memories of our shared home, now tainted by betrayal, became the backdrop against which I began to rebuild. I envisioned a life where I would create my own sanctuary, a space that reflected my newfound strength and resilience. I started drafting ideas for a modest, yet meaningful home that I could call my own, a home where every room echoed with the promise of a future built entirely on my terms. As the days turned into weeks, I found solace in the quiet routines of my life. I re-established a daily schedule that balanced work, self-care, and deep introspection. Mornings were dedicated to long runs that cleared my mind, afternoons to strategic meetings and innovative projects at work, and evenings to reflective writing and quiet conversations with trusted friends. Each day, I felt the burden of betrayal lighten, replaced by the steady rhythm of progress and the promise of new beginnings. I was no longer the man who had been defined by someone else's betrayal. I was evolving into a person who valued his own dreams and was determined to protect his future. In the midst of all this, I began to reconnect with the person I had been before the betrayal, a man who was ambitious, passionate, and full of potential. I reached out to old friends who had known me for who I truly was and found that their unwavering support and honest encouragement were a lifeline. We spent long hours talking about the past, sharing memories of better times, and discussing our hopes for the future. Their belief in me, untainted by the bitterness of recent events, reminded me that my worth was not diminished by someone else's shallow choices. It was in these moments of genuine connection that I found the courage to keep moving forward, to continue building a life that was defined solely by my own aspirations. Every day, I took deliberate steps toward reclaiming my identity and building my future. I immersed myself in the world of personal finance, learning new strategies for investment and wealth building, and I dedicated myself to excelling at my job with an intensity that left no room for doubt. The more I focused on my own growth, the more I began to see that the pain of betrayal was a catalyst for transformation, a painful yet powerful reminder that I was in control of my destiny. With each small victory, whether it was a successful meeting or a moment of clarity during a long run, I felt my confidence grow. I was building a future that was not dependent on anyone else's validation, a future that was truly, unequivocally mine. In those long introspective days and nights, I began to draft the blueprint of a new life. I outlined plans for furthering my career, for expanding my professional network, and for creating a personal sanctuary that would be a testament to my resilience. I envisioned a home that would not only provide physical comfort but also serve as a symbol of the hard-won independence that now defined me. Every plan, every goal, was a declaration. I would not let betrayal dictate my future. I was ready to embrace a new chapter, a chapter written by my own hand, shaped by my own dreams, and built on the unbreakable foundation of self-belief. That morning, as I woke to the soft patter of rain against the window and the quiet hum of a new day, I felt the cumulative weight of everything settle into a profound clarity. The betrayal, the moment I discovered that our emergency fund had been drained to fund her secret escapade with her affair partner, had transformed my life in ways I had never imagined. Now, as I stood in the calm of my own solitude, I realized that while she was panicked and financially ruined, I had, through countless painful decisions and hard-fought battles, reclaimed control over my destiny. I remember the day I finally confronted the reality of her downfall. It had been weeks since that painful discovery, and word had spread quietly among mutual acquaintances that she was struggling. The lavish lifestyle she once boasted about was now crumbling, and she was forced to face a life of regret and hardship. Every whispered conversation and every sympathetic glance confirmed what I already knew deep in my heart. She had gambled away our future and now had nothing to show for it. I watched from a distance as her world began to collapse, friends distancing themselves, creditors calling, and her once assured voice now trembling with panic. And though a part of me felt the sting of old wounds, I also felt an undeniable sense of vindication, a quiet but fierce confirmation that I had chosen my own path. In the weeks that followed, I set about the meticulous work of rebuilding not just my financial security, but every aspect of my life. I had already taken crucial steps to safeguard my future when I realized the gravity of her betrayal. I reallocated my personal savings, diversified my investments, and began planning for a new chapter that was solely my own. I met with financial advisors who walked me through the next steps of building a robust safety net. We strategized about long-term investments, secured stable assets, and even discussed opportunities in emerging markets. Every meeting was a reaffirmation of my independence, a reminder that while she had squandered what was meant to protect us, I still had the power to create a future defined by my own choices. At work, I threw myself into every challenge with a relentless drive that both surprised and inspired my colleagues. I spent long nights at the hospital honing my skills, leading complex projects, and proving through every successful surgery and every innovative procedure that my worth was measured by my perseverance and talent, not by the shallow betrayals of a failed relationship. I found that each operation was a small, personal victory, a testament to the fact that even in the face of deep personal loss, I could channel my pain into something constructive and life-affirming. My career, once a source of quiet pride, began to soar. Recognition from senior management came in the form of awards and promotions, each accolade a silent rebuke to the past, a declaration that I was destined for greatness. I remember the day I was formally promoted. The applause in the boardroom wasn't just for the surgical skills I had mastered, but for the indomitable spirit that had carried me through the darkest of times. Outside the hospital, my journey of personal growth continued with equal intensity. I dedicated time each day to self-reflection, often retreating to a quiet park or the solitude of my study to sit with my thoughts. I found solace in the simple rituals of life: a morning cup of coffee, long walks under a canvas of changing seasons, and the cathartic act of writing down my struggles and triumphs in a battered journal. In those pages, I chronicled the emotional roller coaster of betrayal, the gut-wrenching moments of despair, and the slow, steady process of healing. I poured my heart out, acknowledging every tear and every flash of anger, until eventually, those words began to form a narrative of resilience. I started to see that every setback, every harsh word, and every lonely night had been a stepping stone, a necessary part of my evolution into a person who was unafraid to chase his own dreams. I also reconnected with old friends, people who had known me long before the hurt had seeped into my bones. In intimate gatherings, over shared meals and long conversations, I recounted my journey with a raw honesty that resonated deeply with them. Their unwavering support and empathetic eyes reminded me that my worth had never been in question. It was only the betrayal that had clouded my vision. With every meeting, every laugh shared over a dinner that lasted until the early hours, I began to piece together the fragments of a new life, one built on genuine relationships and the deep, unshakable knowledge that I was enough. Amid the personal healing, I continued to push forward in my career. The long hours at the hospital, the intense focus in the operating room, and the strategic initiatives at board meetings became my proving ground. I began mentoring younger doctors, sharing with them not just technical knowledge but the hard-won lessons of resilience. I explained how every mistake and every setback had taught me something vital about my own strength. In the eyes of those I mentored, I saw reflections of my own journey, a shared belief that true growth comes from rising above failure. That role as a mentor, that act of paying forward the wisdom I had gathered, became one of the most fulfilling aspects of my transformation. It was a silent, powerful assertion that my story, painful yes but ultimately one of triumph, could serve as a guiding light for others struggling to find their way. As the months turned into a year, the external markers of my transformation became undeniable. My professional accolades multiplied, my financial investments flourished, and I finally secured a modest home of my own, a sanctuary that symbolized my renewed independence and the future I had built piece by piece. Every corner of that home, from the sunlit living room to the small study filled with books and memories of hard-won victories, was a constant reminder of the journey I had traveled. I decorated it with artifacts that spoke of my resilience, photos of my proudest moments, souvenirs from meaningful travels, and artwork that captured the colors of my reborn spirit. Yet, the culmination of my journey was not just in the tangible successes I had achieved but in the profound, internal shift that had redefined who I was. I no longer allowed the ghosts of betrayal to dictate my worth. Instead, I embraced the lessons of the past, the nights of loneliness, the bitter taste of shattered dreams, the painful realization of what I had lost, and turned them into a source of strength. I learned that true empowerment comes from accepting every part of your story, the good and the bad, and using it as a foundation for growth. I understood that while the scars of betrayal might never fully vanish, they no longer held me captive. They were now symbols of my resilience, proof that I had the power to rise, rebuild, and thrive despite the deepest wounds. In the midst of my journey, I also began to share my experiences more openly with the world. I wrote articles about overcoming betrayal, spoke at local events about the importance of self-respect, and even started a podcast where I interviewed others who had transformed their lives after facing profound setbacks. Each conversation, each shared story reinforced my belief that my journey was not unique. It was part of a universal narrative of human strength and the relentless drive to reclaim one's identity. The recognition and support I received from these endeavors filled me with a quiet joy, a deep sense of fulfillment that came from knowing I could inspire others to choose themselves, no matter how devastating their losses might be. In the final, quiet moments of each day, as I sat on the porch of my new home watching the sunset, I reflected on how far I had come. The memory of that night, the piercing shock of her betrayal, the painful realization that our emergency fund had been squandered on a secret escapade, had once threatened to break me. But I had taken that pain, that raw, searing hurt, and transformed it into a beacon of hope. I had rebuilt my financial security, reclaimed my professional identity, and most importantly, rediscovered my inner strength. I knew that there would be challenges ahead, that the road to true healing was never a straight line. But I also knew that I had the resilience to face whatever came my way. Now, as I stand on the threshold of a future bright with promise, I feel an unyielding sense of empowerment. I have turned betrayal into a stepping stone, pain into purpose, and heartbreak into a legacy of strength. I have built a life defined not by the shallow judgments of the past, but by the bold choices of the present. Each decision a testament to my commitment to live authentically, to pursue my dreams without compromise. I look ahead with confidence, knowing that every scar is a symbol of my survival and every moment of doubt has been replaced by an unwavering belief in my own worth. This is my story, a saga of transformation, of rising from the ashes of betrayal to build a future that is entirely my own. It is a testament to the indomitable power of the human spirit, a journey marked by the relentless pursuit of truth, resilience, and self-respect. I have learned that while pain is an inevitable part of life, it is not a sentence to be endured passively. Instead, it can be the catalyst for profound change, the fuel that propels you to redefine who you are and what you deserve. And as I step boldly into tomorrow with my heart full of gratitude and my spirit emboldened by every hard-fought victory, I know that my destiny is mine to create, one courageous, determined step at a time.